And when you're ready, Chair.
Yes, you started recording, Tam?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you very much. Okay, well, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the Planning Committee of Neath Talbot Council. Just after 10 o'clock on the 14th of February 2022. This meeting is taking place via the Teams protocol, which by all, we've done so many, we know now. Please keep the microphones on mute unless I call on you to speak. For any members of the public or press who are here, welcome, and you may take no part in the meeting, you're here only to view. If you do have any technical difficulties, if you could either just put a hands up on the screen or put the electronic hand up, then I'll ask Tammy then to see if she can help out to get you back into the meeting. Okay, my iPad's gone off now. Oh, crikey. I've got my agenda. There we are. My agenda's up. So, Tammy, would you please take the roll call?
Certainly, Chair. Would you like me to do the declarations of interest while I'm...
Yeah, we may as well, Tammy. Thank you. Yes.
Okay, Chair. Thank you. And mark yourself as present, Councillor Pardison. And do you have any declarations of interest?
None.
Thank you, Chair. Vice Chair, Councillor Sean Percy. And do you have any declarations of interest to declare?
Present and no interest to declare, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Following councillors, I request you to say you're present or not and whether you have any declarations of interest. Councillor Steve Hunt.
I am here, Tammy, and I have no declarations of interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Arwyn Woolcock.
Sorry, Chair, I was looking for that mute button. Yes, confirm my presence, Chair, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne Renkers.
Present and no interest to declare.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rydian Mason.
Yes, present, Tammy, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Chris Williams.
Present, Chair, but I got a declaration of interest on item 5, application P2019/560 on a personal interest. I know the person, so I'm going to step out of the equation.
Thank you, Councillor Williams. So just to confirm, you have a prejudicial interest for that item. Lovely. We will call you back in after that item so you can take part in the voting and discussion on the other matters. Councillor Mark Prothero.
Present, thanks, Tammy. No interest to declare.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Present, Tammy, and I have no interest to declare.
Thank you. Chair, we've received apologies from Councillor Ros Davis and Councillor Chris James. Have I missed any members out who will be voting and discussing, and the members of the Planning Committee this morning? No, I'll move on to officers then. So, Planning Officers, Kerry Morris.
Present, Tammy.
Thank you. Russell Borthwick.
Present, yes.
Thank you. Chris Davis.
Present.
Thanks. Nicola Lake.
Present, Tammy.
Thank you. Highways Officer Justin Griffiths.
Present, Tammy. Thank you.
Thank you. Legal Officers Mike Shaw.
Yes, thank you, Tammy.
Thank you. And Gavin White.
Present, Tammy.
Thank you. Myself, Tammy Davis, the Democratic Services Officer. Have I missed anybody else? Have I missed anybody off the roll call who will be participating in the meeting this morning? No. No. Oh.
Forgive me, Madam Chair. Councillor Bamsey isn't present, is he?
That's correct. No,
Okay,
no, he's not present. He didn't send his apologies, Mike, so I didn't read his apologies out, but he's not present. There we are, Chair, the roll call is complete.
And can you confirm we are quorum for this meeting, Tam?
Confirmed, Chair, yes.
Thank you. Even with Councillor Williams being missing for an item?
Yes, correct.
Lovely. Okie dokie then. Well, before we proceed, I just want to send our sincere thoughts to Councillor Ros Davis, who isn't here because of a bereavement in the family. So our thoughts are with her. So going on to item 3 on the previous meeting, which can be found on pages 5 to 6 on your bundle. Could I have someone to propose they are a true record?
I move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Keogh. And somebody to second?
A second, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Myson. Okay, those are ratified. We'll move on then. I would just like to draw everybody's attention to the presentation that has been previously circulated as well. And that is to be taken in conjunction with the papers that were issued a while ago. Okay. Has anybody not had access to those? No. Okay. There we are then. We'll move on to the decision-making items today. First of all, item 5, and I believe at this point, Councillor Chris Williams is going to leave, as he said earlier. Chris, I'll get Tammy to call you back in as soon as we finish determining this item, okay?
What do you want me to do, Chair? Turn the volume, mute everything off?
No. Could you just leave the meeting temporarily?
Right, I'll go in the other room then, right, okay.
What we'll do, Chair, if it's okay, Councillor Chris Williams, if you actually leave the meeting as if you were finishing with this meeting, okay? Because we need to ensure that you're not present for any of the discussion of the meeting. So you leave the meeting, Chair, I'll confirm when Councillor Williams has left, and I will ring you back in then, Councillor, for the next item. So you will ring and you can...
Just moving to another meeting is not sufficient, Chris, okay? You have to actually leave.
I'm going to leave, okay.
Okay. Thank you, Councillor.
Thank you, Chair. Tammy, before we proceed.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I can confirm Councillor Williams has left now, Chair. Thank you.
Lovely. Okay, then. So we'll go on to item 5, application P 2019/5560, land adjacent to the Towers Hotel, Jersey Marine. This can be found on pages 7 to 56 in the bundle and is recommended for approval. I'm going to call on Kerry Morris in the first instance to introduce this item.
Thank you, Chair. I'll share my screen a sec, so if you could let me know once you see.
Yes, I can see that presentation now, Kerry.
Okay, as you said, Chair, this application is P 2019-5560, and the proposal is for an outline plan permission for the development of light industrial and office units, use class B1, B2 and B8 plus associated infrastructure. The application has been brought to Planning Committee this morning, Chair, as it's a material departure from the adopted local development plan. In terms of the site and context, the application site, as you see on the screen there, it measures approximately 2.38 hectares, with the Tower Hotel complex located immediately to the east of the site, with the site access passing along the northern boundary of the hotel site. An existing freight train line and small cutting runs along the length of the southern boundary of the site, along with the Amazon warehouse and distribution centre between Ford Amazon and Fabian Way further to the south. To the north of the site is a raised former railway embankment, which with mature trees and planting, and immediately to the north of that is the Tennant Canal and footpath, and currently there are no existing buildings on site. The existing gated access off the adopted highway, the B4290, which provides access to the M4 and Swansea beyond. And the main body of the site, Chair, is located within an existing employment area as identified by policy EC21 of the local development plan. In terms of the description of development, Chair, the application, as I said, seeks outline plan permission for light industrial and office units. All matters relating to the access, appearance, landscaping, layout and scale will be reserved for subsequent approval. And as this is an outline application, detailed plans have not been submitted in support of the application, but an illustrative plan shown on screen there has been provided, which show the overall parameters of the development, and these are set out, Chair, in the body of the report. In terms of negotiations, officers have been engaged in dialogue with the applicant, notably in respect of ecology matters, and indeed the buffer zone to be provided between the proposed development and the hotel complex immediately to the east. And amended plans have been submitted as a consequence of those negotiations, which subsequently increase this particular area and address the concerns of officers, and I'll touch on that in a moment, Chair. In terms of consultations, in the main, there are no objections subject to suitable conditions. There is a holding objection from National Grid in relation to safety distances between the proposed development and their apparatus. And the City of County of Swansea have also submitted an objection citing concerns over the amount of office B1 development that could result in an adverse impact in terms of the city centre. In terms of representations made, the neighbouring properties were consulted on the 7th of November 2019 and again on the 5th of October 2020. And the application was advertised in the South Wales Evening Post on the 19th of November 2019 and the 8th of October 2020, and again on site on the 7th of November 2019 and the 1st of October. And as I said, confirming, Chair, it's a departure to the local development plan. A letter of objection was subsequently received from the local ward member, along with one other representation, which the report summarises the detail of. So in terms of the issues for this particular development for Planning Committee to consider, the principle of development, of course, together with the impact on the visual amenity and character of the area, the amenity of neighbouring properties, highway pedestrian safety, and elements in terms of biodiversity, flooding and pollution control. In terms of the principle of development, as I said, Chair, the majority of the site lies within an existing employment area as defined within the LDP, but parts of the site do lie outside of this particular allocation and settlement limits. And this relates predominantly to the access into the site and a section near the buffer zone along the western boundary of the Towers Hotel. So if I just concentrate for a moment, Chair, on the buffer zone between the employment allocation and the Towers complex. Okay. The initial boundary, and this is the area that I'm sort of where I'm referring to here. The boundary of the existing employment area was drawn initially to exclude a wooded area, which would have acted as a buffer between this future sort of employment development and the existing sort of hotel complex. But this land was cleared of trees, but at some point prior to 2017. So it's important then, Chair, that we retain a degree of buffer so that we have that also we reduce the impact of any proposed development on the hotel complex. And the revised scheme sets the built development away from the boundary, therefore retaining what officers regard as a robust landscaped buffer zone that would provide both adequate screening and allow for protection of visual amenity for residents and visitors of the neighbouring hotel. So whilst the proposal does still extend outside of the employment allocation, and hence it being identified as a departure, it does retain a distance in excess of 33 metres between the buildings proposed on the application site and the rear elevation of the tower complex. And as I said, Chair, this area is also proposed to be planted with trees and vegetation, which would be detailed by condition in part of any permission sort of issued. In terms of the access road to the site, as I say, there's the existing gated access at this point here. That again, as I said, Chair, is located outside of the settlement limits. So in planning terms, is considered to be sort of within the open countryside. Criterion 9 of policy SC1 does, however, state that development may be acceptable outside of defined limits where it is associated with the provision of infrastructure and other matters that cannot be reasonably located elsewhere. Now, infrastructure typically refers to physical structures that are required in terms of allowing the community to operate, and that would include road infrastructure. So given that that is the case, and given that this particular access cannot be reasonably located elsewhere, the alignment of the proposed access is considered to be compliant with policy SC1. And in terms of the physical impact of the access road, the access is already in place and is presently gated, and I'll probably show some images later on in the presentation, and has been clearly used in the past for maintenance purposes. So as such, it's considered that any further physical alterations would not unduly detract from the visual amenity and character of the area. So moving on then to the impact on visual amenity. As I said, the majority of the site lies within the allocated area for employment, and much of this allocation is already characterised by large industrial type buildings and warehouses, and as such the introduction of further sort of industrial type development in the area would not be out of character, and that's a sort of gives an image of some of the elevations that are proposed for these units. So again, the indicative layout shows a large buffer which will be planted with trees and shrubs, and again that will act as a visual buffer to the wider employment allocation. And the proposed development can also incorporate a design which is not dissimilar to the design of the surrounding industrial development, but would be at a sort of a smaller scale, with heights being kept between 6.6 metres and 7.75 metres to take into account the adjoining hotel complex. And again, that shows an image on screen there showing the relative scale of the buildings. So in terms of impact on residential amenity, the application site or the nearest properties, I should say, to the allocation site, the Tower Hotel Complex and Spa. And as stated earlier, the separation distance will be in excess of 33 metres from the building. And in addition to this, there will be that landscape buffer as referenced. So the nearest residential properties are located to the north along Ashley Terrace, and they are approximately 50 metres from the development. So there is also a wooded area in between the application site and these residential dwellings as well. So in those terms, the development would not therefore be considered to have any unacceptable impact in terms of overlooking, overshadowing, or indeed overbearing impact. Moving on to issues such as noise, several objections have been raised in terms of the potential for noise and disturbance from the development on adjoining properties and their amenity. The applicant has provided a noise impact assessment which makes several assumptions regarding the use of the premises in order to derive its predicted sort of noise levels. Our environmental officers have reviewed the information, have made no objection to those, albeit they have identified a number of recommendations to ensure that the proposed development is constructed and operates in accordance with those assumptions, Chair. And a suitable condition has been or will be imposed to restrict the use of the units that are located on the eastern boundary and those immediately adjacent to the Towers Hotel to B1 offices, research and development, and indeed any industrial process that can be carried out within a residential area without causing detriment to the amenity of the property. So moving on then, Chair, to parking and access requirements and the impact on highway safety. The access to the site, as I've said, Chair, is off the B4290, utilising the existing access which has been constructed previously. And if I just perhaps show a couple of images for members, there's the existing gated access there. You've got that hotel complex here. Mm-hmm. So that gives you a flavour of what exists on site at the moment. So, as I say, the indicative layout shows that the proposed access would measure 7.3 metres wide, with 2 metre wide pavements either side, and that will run along the northern edge of the site. And the indicative layout of the site shows that a total of 119 parking spaces can be provided on the site, along with suitable cycle storage. And accordingly, it is considered that there is therefore sufficient space within the application site to ensure the development is provided with adequate parking and cycle provision along with pedestrian links. A transport assessment has been submitted to assess the development, and this concludes that the proposed development would not be expected to have any detrimental impact on in terms of sustainable travel, road safety, or indeed traffic impact, and therefore the existing highway network can accommodate the development that is proposed. And accordingly, the Highways colleagues have raised no objection, subject to, of course, to a number of suitably worded conditions. Just quickly on land contamination, a geotechnical report has been submitted by the applicant, but given that it was prepared back in 1999, it would no longer be considered to be a viable report and an appropriate report to consider as part of this application. So accordingly, a standard suite of land contamination conditions will therefore be proposed or imposed, I should say, in order to ensure that land contamination issues can be suitably addressed. Flooding issues, in considering the principle of development, A material consideration is, of course, the site's location in respect of whether it falls within dam zone C2. Now, within zone C2, development can take place subject to the application of a justification test, including acceptability of consequences. And NRW has stated that the application does propose less vulnerable development, in this case industrial units, and that it lies outside of but is in close proximity to dam zone C2. So whilst this is the case for the building, there are small sections of the access road that would fall within the flood zone C2. So as a consequence, an assessment, an FCA has been submitted and to support the application, but NRW have not raised any objection to that particular FCA, Chair. Touching briefly on biodiversity and ecology matters, the proposed habitat creation through informal landscaped areas throughout the site and including the buffer to the eastern boundary will mitigate any losses and enhance the site as appropriate. And our ecologists have assessed the proposal and offered no objection, subject to details being submitted through reserve matters. There will be a small loss of trees on site, primarily to the northern boundary, sort of immediately adjacent to the access site, but these trees have been identified, Chair, as being of low quality, and furthermore, any loss of trees can be compensated with new trees being planted in terms of the wider site and indeed the buffer zone, which would be planted as according to condition. The report does also deal with a number of other matters, including coal mining legacy, renewable energy, waste management, open space, and as I said, the requirement for overhead lines. But all those matters are suitably dealt with, Chair, via suitably worded conditions that would accompany any permission granted. In terms of other matters that are not addressed elsewhere in the report, Swansea's objection, as I mentioned right at the front end, where they object to small-scale offices, where they object to large-scale B1 use, the response would simply be that the proposed development is in accordance with the local development plan, and the vast majority of the site is allocated for suitable employment uses B1, B2 and B8, and as such it is considered acceptable on policy terms. So in conclusion, Chair, whilst the proposal would constitute a departure from the LDP in that it does extend beyond the existing employment area, it is considered in terms of the planning balance to be a development of this brownfield site with business and industrial uses not only enhances the character and appearance of the area, but it will also provide a degree of economic benefit to the area by providing new employment opportunities. And the proposal would deem to be having no unacceptable impact in terms of residential amenity, highway and pedestrian safety, biodiversity, pollution and flooding. And accordingly, the proposed development does accord with a number of policies within the development plan. So the recommendation, Chair, for Planning Committee's consideration is approval subject to suitably worded conditions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Morris. Okay. Sorry, I've got an echo. Is there anybody else got an echo? Somebody got their mic on? No? Seems to have gone now. That's okay. There we are. Right. While you were doing that presentation, we did have a guest member of the public enter the meeting who wasn't present when I gave the advice about not taking part in the meeting. So I'd just like to stress that. Welcome to Mr. Ted Peskett. Lovely to see you here today to look at the meeting and to attend, but you may not take part in it in any way, and that includes writing in the chat. So just thought I'd go over that because Mr. Peskott wasn't here in the meeting when I laid out those conditions. Okay then, right, at this point I would normally go to the ward member. She is not present at this morning's meeting, although she did submit a letter which is in the report. So we cannot actually go to her for any stressed recommendations from her. So I'm just going to open it up then to members of the public, members of the committee to ask any questions they may have. And Councillor Hunt, please, first.
Yes, Chair. Thank you for allowing me to come in at this moment in time. Kerry, and Chair, I was unable to open the mod.gov presentation or anything to do with it. So another bit of a blip on the mod.com.
Okay.
I just wanted to ask, and I just need.
But look, can Councillor Hunt finish what he's saying, Tam? I'll come back to you.
It's okay, Chair, it's just a matter on what Councillor Hunt was saying about the presentation, that's all. It was circulated via email as well, if Councillor Hunt would like to view it on there.
Right, I'll just go back to Councillor Hunt first.
Thank you.
Yeah, sorry,
yes,
sorry,
I did see it on an email. Yeah, sorry, but I relied on the mod.gov and I thought, so it was a bit of a blip. I did look at it on the thing, but I can't refer to pages. That's what I'm referring to now at this moment in time, that's all. But anyway, it's not really important. I think what I'm going to say is important in respect to, it's a departure you mentioned, Kerry, and I just want to ask, as I said, because I haven't got the report in front of me, settlement limit boundaries as well. If there's parts of the site outside settlement limits, and we're usually strong on our policies in relationship to that. I just wondered what policies allow building on land that's outside settlement limits, because we have a lot of these issues across the county borough from time to time. And I have no issues with the presentation and the recommendations, but I think sometimes we need to ask these questions. And Chair, the local member, obviously Councillor Keown made a comment prior to the meeting, and I just need to clear that up. You may not have heard.
Councillor, we weren't recording. It wasn't part of the meeting.
Yeah, well, okay, right, but you've just said as well about the local member. I believe the local member is Councillor Helen Kerry Clark, and what I'm referring to, Councillor Clark has just lost her dad in the last 7 days, and therefore I think that you need to understand the reasons why she isn't here this morning. It may be on her own fault for not notifying you, but you are being notified now. And I wanted to ask, because I haven't got the report, can I have a bit of an update on what her particular objections were, Kerry? I know you just mentioned noise and other issues. I haven't got it in front of me. The chair referred to it. So just a couple of things: the departure, the settlement limits, and her objections. What were they, if you don't mind, Chair? Thank you very much.
Totally, Councillor Hunt, and I'm obliged to you for giving the committee information to which they were not party to. I wasn't aware that she had lost a member of her family. So we will all understand that, you know, sometimes personal issues come first. But having said that, she did have the foresight to include a document in the bundle, which is on, I'm sorry, I've gone past that now. If somebody can help me out, page, if I can remember from memory, she was, I've got it, okay. So you haven't got access to this at all. I shall read it out then, Councillor Hunt, okay?
Yes, please.
Yeah, I wish to submit observations regarding the above named application. I feel that this is a matter that needs looking into by the planning committee, including a site visit. The proposed access road is very close to hotel rooms at the Towers Hotel, and given that these commercial properties may have lorries delivering at all times of the day and night, it could have an adverse effect with regard to noise on the property and will result in loss of amenity. I feel that the access road is not in the right place, as there is very little view and oncoming traffic from the entrance. There would also be an increase in traffic going through Jersey Marine Village and Fabian Way due to the vehicles accessing the proposed development. Jersey Marine has already had an increase in traffic because of Coed Darcy development, which has yet to be addressed by way of the building of a link road between there and Ffordd Amazon. You will note that there is a weight limit through Jersey Marine, which would then need to be more rigorously enforced. In summary, the increase in local traffic, noise and loss of amenity means that this is an unacceptable development to local people. I would therefore be grateful if the committee could look at this development and come to their own determination. So, you know, if you haven't got access to it, that there is everything that she said. I can see that Councillor, sorry, I'm demoting you, Mr. Shaw, our legal representative, would like to say something. So, Mike?
Thank you, Madam Chair. No, just to say, sorry, I was having difficulty with my screen, but it's at page 12.
Oh, lovely. Yeah, I read it, but I didn't notify the page number. So it is on page 12 of the document. So what she in excess is saying is she is complaining about those things. But the last line is that she would be grateful if the committee could look at the development and come to their own determination. So I take your point, Councillor. That is bereavement that has stopped her being here. I didn't mean any slight on the councillor at all. What I meant was we cannot actually go to the councillor for her to stress anything that she might have done if she was here in person.
Yeah, no, I fully appreciate that, and I'm not dwelling on that. What I would like now, because I haven't got access, I'd like either Justin Griffiths on the highway issue and Kerry, our head of planning, to address those concerns and where they were in the report and the responses to them, really, so that I have a better understanding that they were taken on board when putting this planning application in front of us this morning. Thank you us all. Sorry about this, because I haven't got the papers.
No need to apologise. No, these glitches do happen. But you had previously read the papers. You've previously read them, but you haven't got access to them today to quote page numbers and such. Is that correct?
Yes, and I obviously didn't read them in total detail. No, I was going to look at them today, so apologies.
And nobody can remember them verbatim. I totally get that, which is why I read out that paragraph from the local member. So I'm going to go first of all to Kerry Morris to address some of the questions, and then Justin Griffiths, Highways Officer, will take you through the other concerns that the local member had. First, Kerry Morris, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, what I'll perhaps do, if I perhaps address the departure issue first, and then perhaps clarify a couple of comments I made in terms of the overall presentation, and then I'll certainly pass across to Mr. Griffiths, who will cover any sort of highway matters. Okay. But Councillor Hunt, just to clarify the departure issue, the departure element of this particular application relates only to the fact that the existing employment area goes slightly beyond the identified allocation in the LDP. In terms of the access road, that is in itself outside settlement limits, what we've assessed as part of this application is that it does comply with Criterion 9, which does allow infrastructure where it cannot be reasonably located elsewhere. And I think in this particular case, as I hopefully covered in my presentation, the access road comes off the B4290, utilising what is an existing access point, which has been used for maintenance in the past, and this particular access point cannot be reasonably located elsewhere. And as a consequence, Councillor Hunt, that particular element is not considered to be a departure because it complies with that particular criterion. But as I said, it is only the fact that the buildings proposed as part of the sort of employment site goes slightly beyond the site as identified within the LDP. And as I touched on at the start of the sort of presentation, the line was drawn where it was drawn because there was previous trees and vegetation there. There was a clear sort of defensible boundary at the point where the LDP was prepared. What has happened in the interim is that those trees and vegetation were cleared at some point prior to 2017. So the situation essentially material changed on site, and that's perhaps why the line was drawn where it was. So that's basically hopefully clarified the departure issue. In terms of the other elements that the local ward member has raised in terms of sort of loss of amenity, as I said, hopefully what I've set out in the presentation sort of has addressed those matters, in the sense that given that in terms of the access point that runs along the northern part of the hotel complex, given that was or that is already in existence, the additional sort of development that would be needed over and above what is existing on site wouldn't unduly detract from the visual amenity and character of that particular area. So perhaps if I pass, Chair,
Yes,
at this
please.
point, maybe
Yeah,
to Justin to pick up the height matter.
We'll take over from you on the highway issues that raised by Councillor Hunt on behalf of the local member. So Justin, please.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Good morning, everyone. I picked up on 3 points, Chair, that obviously you had spoken about the Councillor Kerry Clark's concerns relating to the highways. The first one I'd like to address is the traffic trips to and from the site. This development was subject to a full transport impact assessment, which would have taken into account this the post-construction use of this development and what's currently in situ, together also with permitted development in and around that area. And having gone through a rigorous assessment, we found that the county roads are more than capable of taking the traffic trips to and from the site. That's the first thing with regards. Yes, there will be an increase in traffic, which is to be expected, because there's new development taking place there and it's for industrial use. That's the first thing. Now, hopefully these answers will go some way to answering any concerns from other members in committee as well, by the way. The entrance was obviously adopted by the council, under a section 278 agreement back many years ago. So the visibility of the junction complies with the council's highway specification and design guide. There may be some vegetation that is possible to be removed now, because obviously the infrequency of it being used over many years. It was used intermittently for various other projects, so it has been used. But like everything, if it's just gated and it's not being used, then obviously it requires a little bit of maintenance maybe to bring it up to a standard. And that's just me speculating, but it is adequate visibility display because it's been checked as part of the junction and the previous approval and adoption, more importantly, of that junction. So that's the second one. And the last one, if members and Madam Chair, you would indulge me if I share the screen. I've got a map showing, thank you, a map showing Google Earth. And if I can just explain the sort of 7.5 ton weight restrictions, just to give members an idea of what we're looking at. So just bear with me a second and please let me know if you can see the screen.
I will.
There we go, my apologies. There we go.
Oh, don't worry, it takes a few seconds. We're getting so used to technology, we want it to be instant.
Absolutely.
Okay, we can see it now.
Fabulous. Can you all see my hand as well, hovering?
Yeah.
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 So if you just focus on the hand there, I'll explain to the location of where the 7.5 ton weight restrictions are at the moment. This is the access road, by the way, coming from the Llandarcy and the Sports Academy and the like. So you'd be coming down to here. You've got Pantysices in here. At the access into the village there, the weight restriction starts. The reason for the weight restriction, we believe, as a council, was put in place because HGVs was using it as a rat run, basically, to get onto the Fourth Amazon roundabout and then back onto the motorway through those means, or even into Swansea, dare I say. So the weight restriction was mainly to do with sort of noise. But that's not going to change. We're not planning on changing any of that. That will be staying as is, because the majority of the complaints, if not all of them, were in this area here. I've spoken to our traffic management section this morning as well to discuss this. And then it stops then just before the bridge, which is roughly about here, and you've got the Towers Hotel as a landmark. And this is the entrance then coming into the site, and this triangle here is where the development is located. So the access point is running alongside the towers, as my colleague Kerry was explaining to you in his presentation. But the weight restriction stops just before the bridge, so it's nothing to do with the bridge at all, because it stops just before the bridge, or you enter the bridge. So what we're looking at doing as a traffic section is relocating the traffic order at the cost of the applicant, and maybe putting it just alongside the entrance here. So that prevents vehicles then of a size over 7.5 ton turning left into the village, and it prevents them travelling along there, causing the problems that they had previously. We don't perceive this to be a safety issue or a noise issue as well, because vehicles will slow down on the approach to the junction, so they'll effectively be slowing down traffic as well as they be turning left in and out of the development. The junction, as I said, has been designed previously to accommodate that. So I hope that explains the the weight restriction, and that can be altered as part of a revised or traffic regulation order, which obviously the applicant can undertake. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Griffiths, and I'll be grateful if you could just stop. Yeah, it's lovely. Sharing the screen at the moment, and that does actually come to one of the queries that I had, and I think it's been adequately addressed, so I won't be asking that question now. So I'll go back then to Councillor Hunt, because obviously you raised the questions as member of the committee, but also on behalf of Kerry Clark, who was not able to be here today. So are you happy with the answers to the questions?
Yes, Chair, I thank Kerry and Justin for those very comprehensive answers. But I do appreciate you allowing them so that I have a better understanding on Councillor Kerry Clark's questions and for my own peace of mind for this application. So thank you very much.
No problem. We can't have any member of the committee not being absolutely 100% about the information that's being put before them. So that's why I actually stressed what she said, because you can't actually see it this morning. However, you have seen it in the past. So we go on to Councillor Wilcock has a question, please.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I haven't got anything against this particular proposal, to be honest, but I have got a question, and I hope it isn't a daft one, Madam Chair, but if somebody could clarify this for me then.
No such thing, no such thing.
Yeah, you know, we're looking at an application that's a departure from the local development plan for employment purposes. And I'm just wondering why on page 10, sorry, then, where we have planning history, it states that the application site has the following relevant planning history. And there's a host of planning applications there. Most of them have been were approved. So is it a case that this particular site was in a previous plan, for example, the unitary development plan, but isn't in the local development plan? So that's my question, Chair. Could somebody clarify that for me?
Of course, not a stupid question at all. Mr. Morris, please.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to drag my back of my memory for this one. I mean, yeah, I mean most of the planning history, as Councillor Wilcock has just outlined, does relate to the period where it was prior to the adoption of the LDP. So, you know, if I'm honest, Chair, I would have to go back and remind myself what the UDP was showing at that particular location and site at this stage. But again, going back to and touching on this departure issue, as I said, the vast majority of the proposed site, the red line, is policy compliant in that it aligns with the existing employment area identified within the local development plan. It is only a small area to the east of the site that extends slightly beyond that area. So I don't think it wouldn't be appropriate for me to sort of comment on what degree of departure it is, because it is technically a departure. But it is just a small area of the red line that we're talking about, Councillor Wilcock, that relates to the departure.
Yeah, Councillor, I know it's very difficult when we go into applications which have gone back many years, but obviously the officers have given you recommendations based on our LDP as it stands right now. They have come to committee because it does actually depart from the LDP. However, slightly, you know, officers may wish to take that. Kerry has explained it is a departure. So we can't really comment on why the others were seemingly approved. Are you happy with the response, Councillor Wilcock?
Well, entirely, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it just proves the point, really. I know that if it was earmarked for development before, there's nothing really wrong in it being a departure from the LDP now. And the plan that Mr. Griffiths kindly showed us, or the Google map shot that Mr. Griffiths showed us, it looked to me as if it's really technically, I suppose, an infill piece of development between the rear of Amazon, which I take it is that large building, and the Towers Hotel. So I have no problem at all with the application, Chair, even though that it is a departure. I can accept the officer's reasoning that they've given this morning. And when you are ready, Chair, I'm happy to move it.
Okay, that's very kind of you, Councillor Wilcock. And you know, it would be remiss of me to stress that each application is taken on its own merits, and officers have put it before committee because it is in effect our LDP that we voted upon. Members of the committee are now able to decide, is a departure correct or not, and you can approve or not on that basis. So I thank you for your question and your offer. Do I have anybody else that wishes to raise a question or make a comment? No? I see none then. So I will take you up on your offer because I'm going to go to the recommendations on page 37, which is for approval of the outline planning application with the 50. And, you know, we'll stress the number of conditions that are attached to this outline application, which is on page 37 for members to look at and for us to decide. So do I have a proposer, please?
I move, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Wilcock. A seconder?
I second, Chair.
Everybody's waiting for everybody else, I think. There we are. Okay. So I'll go back to Tammy now then. Please, Tammy, will you take members of the committee through whether or not they've been present throughout the whole meeting and whether or not they are going to vote for or against or abstain for the recommendation, please.
Thank you very much, Chair, certainly. So I will start with yourself, Councillor Paterson. Chair, have you been present for the whole of the item, and how do you wish to vote, please?
Yes, I've not lost any connection at all. I've been present throughout and I will be voting along for approval.
Thank you, Chair. Same questions to Councillor Vice Percy. Have you been present for the whole of the item, and how do you wish to vote?
Thanks, Tammy. I dropped out for a brief moment during Kerry's presentation, but only a few seconds. I fully heard all the debate and discussion other than that, and I'll be voting in favour of the recommendation. Thank you, Tammy.
As long as you feel it didn't change anything, Councillor, that's fine.
No, I'd read the presentation in advance, so it was just as Kerry was running through it, so that's fine.
Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair. Councillor Steve Hunt, please. Were you present for the whole of the item, and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, Tammy, I've been present for the whole item and I'll be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Same questions to Councillor Arwyn Wilcock, please.
Yes, Chair, I confirm that I've been present for the whole agenda item and I'm voting for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Suzanne Renkes.
I've been present for the whole item and I vote for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rydian Mason.
Yes, I can confirm that I've been present for the whole item and I'll be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Prothero, please.
Thank you, Tammy. Yeah, Chair, I like the Vice Chair, had a little dropout during Kerry's presentation, but I don't believe it was anything that that would have changed my mind in any way, as I'd seen the presentation beforehand. So I will be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Prothero.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Dennis Keogh, please.
Yes, Tammy, I can confirm I'll be here for the entire presentation and I'll be voting for.
Thank you very much. We have received apologies on this item from Councillor Chris Williams. Councillor Scott Bamsey is not present, and we've received apologies from Councillor Ros Davis and Chris James for this meeting. Just to check, there are no other members who are able to vote present who I haven't called out. No, there we are, Chair. This item was approved.
Thank you very much, Tammy. And would you please contact Councillor Williams to re-enter the meeting, please, now?
Certainly. Bear with me, Chair.
Okay, we'll just wait until he's back.
Yeah, just calling him in now.
Yeah, no probs.
Councillor Chris Williams is present now, Chair.
Thank you. Welcome back, Councillor Williams. We've determined that item, so we're moving on now to agenda item 6 on today's bundle, which is planning applications, again recommended for approval. It is P 2021-1206, two-storey detached dwelling with parking and associated works. Mr. Morris, please.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. And again, if you bear with me a sec, I'll just share my screen and pull the presentation back up.
Yep.
And if you could let me know when you can see it.
Yep, I can see it. Thank you.
Okay, as you said, Chair, this is a proposal for a two-storey detached dwelling with parking and associated works, and its location is at Plot 1, Glannan Place at Cwmgrach. And these departures are like London buses, Chair. You wait for a while and they come along two at once. So this application, Chair, is brought before Planning Committee again as a material departure from the local development plan. In terms of the site and context, the site is located, as I said, at Plot 1, Glannan Place, which is located, as you can see on screen, at the corner of Glannan Place and Heola Graig. The site is a small plot. It measures approximately 0.038 hectares in area. It's currently vacant land, classed as brownfield, as it has been partly excavated. It's sloping in profile from south to the north side, but is relatively flat east to west. The site is bounded by open land to the west, residential buildings to the north, and the public highway to the east and south. The site, Chair, was previously granted plan permission for residential development, and whilst the two dwellings immediately to the north were constructed, which are these here,
yep.
Perhaps better to show that on that particular
yep.
Image. Were constructed, this particular plot was never developed, and subsequently, at the point at which the LDP came forward, the site was excluded from current settlement limits. So in terms of the description of development, as I said, the application seeks full planning permission for the construction of a two-storey dwelling with parking and associated works. The proposed dwelling itself would measure approximately 10.42 metres in length, 10.3 metres in depth, and would reach a height of 8.4 metres to ridge level. It's designed with a gable-ended roof, ridged roof, sorry, with projecting gable to the front elevation. And if I perhaps bring up that so you can see.
Yeah, that's lovely.
Yeah. So it's proposed to be finished with cream-facing brick with rendered gable features and roof tiles, with solar panels to the rear roof plane, and windows and doors are proposed on all 4 elevations. And externally, 3 car parking spaces are proposed to the front driveway, with a retaining wall proposed to the southern side of the dwelling, measuring up to approximately 2.6 metres in height. In terms of consultations, we've had no objections, subject to conditions, suitably worded conditions. In terms of representations received, neighbouring properties were consulted on the 14th of December and a site notice displayed on the 21st of December. And the application, again, as it was a departure, was advertised in the press on the 17th of December, and no responses or representations have been received as a consequence of that advertisement. So in terms of the report, again, the main issues to consider are the principles of development, together with the impact on the visual amenity of the area and amenity of neighbouring properties and highway safety. So taking the principle of development in the first instance, now as the application site is located outside of settlement limits defined by the LDP, there would of course ordinarily be a presumption against the principle of residential development at this particular location. This site, however, is unusual in that it is surrounded by the settlement limit of Cwmgrach on 3 sides, north, south and east. And as I said, the site was previously granted plan permission for residential development, but was never completed and would now considered to be lapsed. So in light of this, the development now proposed would be considered as infill development, essentially, Chair.
Yeah.
So the report does refer to a relevant appeal, whereby a similar application for infill development was also classified as a departure from the LDP, and the inspector referenced test criteria, which, whilst not definitive, are a good starting point for any assessment of such circumstances, and these, Chair, are set out in the report for Planning Committee. In terms of the existing settlement pattern, that consists of residential development along either side of Glannan Place and along the southern side of Hale y Graig. So the development of this site as infill would effectively join together the two parts of the settlement, and on this basis would be considered an acceptable departure from the LDP. By definition of this particular parcel of land sitting outside of settlement limits, it is therefore currently within the Vale of Neath special landscape area identified within the LDP. And policy EN2 seeks to protect areas of high landscape value where development will only be permitted where it's demonstrated that there will be no significant adverse impacts on the features and characteristics that led to the area being designated as such. Now, given that this site is brownfield, in that it has already been partly excavated, and that the proposal would result in the introduction of a single dwelling immediately adjacent to the settlement limit, it's considered that development would not result in any significant adverse impact on the features or indeed characteristics of the wider designated area. Moving on to the density issue, members will of course be aware that policy BE1 stipulates that development proposals within the Valley's strategy area would normally be expected to achieve a minimum of 30 dwellings per hectare. The density for this particular proposal equates to approximately 26 dwellings per hectare. And whilst this does fall below that expected threshold, it is considered acceptable in this particular instance, given site constraints in terms of the levels, topography, and the necessary easements to underground site infrastructure, such as the sewers. In terms of the impact on visual amenity, the proposed dwelling would be sited within the general building line of the existing dwellings to the north. It would also be set slightly higher than the existing dwelling to the north following the road level. And although it would have a gable-ended ridged roof and not a hipped roof like the existing dwellings to the north, it is noted that there are a mixture of roof designs and styles of dwellings along Glannan Place. So consequently, it's considered that the overall proposal would not have a detrimental impact on the character and appearance of the surrounding street scene. But suitably worded conditions will nevertheless be imposed, requiring details of external materials to be submitted for approval, together with conditions restricting permitted development rights for any outbuildings or indeed extensions. Moving on to impact on residential amenity. In terms of its potential for overlooking, the side-facing windows and doors are proposed on the northern and southern-facing elevations. However, these serve non-habitable rooms, WCs or indeed utility rooms, so would not create any unacceptable overlooking issues. Again, though, a suitably worded condition will be imposed to ensure that the windows are fitted with obscure glazing. There would be no issues associated with the windows to the western or rear elevations, given that they overlook the vacant land and countryside. Windows to the front or eastern elevation, there would be a separation distance of approximately 15.4 metres to the property opposite, which is number 17, and the windows would overlook the street scene at Glannan Place, and side elevation of number 17, which is angled actually away from the site with no windows in the main pine end facing the street. So accordingly, with those issues in mind, it's considered that the proposed development would not create any unacceptable overlooking issues. In terms of potential for overbearing or overshadowing, the proposed dwelling would be set at a higher level than the neighbour, number 10, following the if I just move actually to that image, which will give members an idea of the site. The proposed dwelling would be set behind the rear building line of number 10A, but approximately 2.3 metres, but it would not breach the 45-degree code. And there's one small window at the side of the neighbouring property, number 10A, with the original floor plans for this property showing it would serve a WC. So as again, this is non-habitable, it's considered that the proposed dwelling would not have any unacceptable impact on the neighbouring properties in terms of its overbearing or overshadowing nature. Just quickly mentioning parking and access requirements and the impact on highway safety. The proposed development would provide, as the images have shown, 3 off-street car parking spaces accessed off Glanham Place, and as a consequence, the Highways colleagues have offered no objections to this development, but again, those subject to conditions, as it's considered that there will be no detrimental impact on highway or indeed pedestrian safety. Briefly touching on biodiversity and ecology, the biodiversity enhancement is proposed as part of the development in the form of artificial bat root boxes affixed to the gable ends, and as a consequence, our ecologist has no objection to the proposal. So in conclusion, Chair, whilst again this proposal does constitute a departure from the LDP in that it is a small area outside of settlement limits, given that this site is surrounded by the residential development on 3 sides, in this particular instance, the development is considered appropriate infill development, and it would not have a detrimental impact upon the residential amenity or indeed the character and appearance of the surrounding area. So as a consequence, the proposed development would be in accordance with policies SC1, EN2, M1, TR2 and BE1 of the LDP. So the recommendation again, Chair, is approval subject to conditions.
Thank you very much, Mr. Morris. Okay, I would, as I say, normally go to the local member, but I know she has been in contact with planning officers and has decided, because of the recommendation by officers, that was perhaps not necessary today. So I'm going to ask members of the committee if anybody has any questions or comments to make on this application recommended for approval. Tammy, I see none. Do you see any questions?
I see no hands raised for questions, Chair, no.
No, there we are. Okay, then I'm going to take committee to page 64 for the recommendations on this item, which is recommended for approval subject to 18 conditions. Could I ask for a proposer, please?
I move, Chair.
So that was Councillor Keogh and somebody else? Councillor Wilcox.
Yeah, happy.
Yeah, lovely. Okay, thank you both. So Tammy, again, would you take members through whether or not they've been here for the whole item and which way they want to vote?
Certainly, Chair. I'll begin with yourself. Have you been present for this whole item and how do you wish to vote?
Yes, I have been present and I will vote for the recommendation.
Thank you, Chair. Same questions to Vice Chair, Councillor Sean Percy, please.
I've been present for the whole item and I'll be voting for the recommendation, Tammy.
Thanks, Councillor Percy. Same questions to the following councillors. Councillor Steve Hunt, please.
Yes, Tammy, I have been here for the whole item and I'm voting for the recommendation. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Arwyn Wilcock.
Yes, Chair, I confirm that I've been present for the whole agenda item, voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Suzanne Renkes.
I've been present for the whole item and I vote for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Rydian Mason.
Yes, I've been present for the whole item, Tammy, and I will be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Mark Prothero.
Thanks, Tammy. Yes, I confirm I've been present for the whole agenda item and I will be voting for the recommendation.
Thank you. Councillor Dennis Keogh.
Thank you, Tammy. Yes, I've been here for the entire item and I will be voting for.
Thank you, Councillor. And finally, Councillor Chris Williams, who declared at the last item but doesn't have a declaration for this item.
Lovely.
Thank you, Tammy. I confirm I've been present for the agenda item and I'm for the recommendation.
Thank you very much, Councillor. Chair, that's unanimous that that application has been approved.
Thank you very much, Tammy. Okay, then we'll move along to item 7 on today's agenda, the delegated decisions, which have been published on page 71 to 78 of the bundle. And item 8, urgent items. I have no urgent items. I'm sorry. Does anybody have any comments to make about any delegated decisions? Sorry, I moved on a bit quick there. I don't see any hands. Thank you. Okay, I have no urgent items, so I thank you all very much for your attendance today and your decisions, and declare the meeting closed. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
Bye.
Thank you.